Commander Vex-Nine clicked his mandibles in what humans might mistake for amusement. Oh, how wrong they would be. The irony of the situation was lost on absolutely no one in the war room, except perhaps the human female sitting across from him, shackled to a chair that had seen better millennia. So Vex-Nine began, his voice carrying the characteristic rasp of his species. You expect us to believe that you, a single human, managed to infiltrate our most secure facility on Kepler 442b. He leaned back in his biomechanical throne, 8 eyes focusing on the woman who had somehow caused more damage to their war effort in 3 days than the entire Terran fleet had managed in 3 months. The human who had identified herself as Captain Elena Martinez during her enthusiastic interrogation simply shrugged. Her auburn hair was matted with what Vex-Nine's sensors indicated was a mixture of blood, sweat, and something that smelled suspiciously like the lubricant from their quantum drives. How delightfully disgusting these creatures were. Well, Vex-Nine pressed, tapping his claws against the armrest with increasing irritation. Are you going to sit there bleeding on my nice clean floor, or are you going to explain how you single-handedly destroyed 15 million credits worth of military equipment? Elena raised her head, and Vex-Nine felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, genuine surprise. Her eyes weren't filled with the terror he'd grown accustomed to seeing in captured enemies. Instead, they held something far more dangerous, amusement. 15 million, she asked, her voice hoarse but carrying an unmistakable note of satisfaction. Wow, I was aiming for 20, but I guess I'll have to settle for slightly disappointing my commanding officer. She paused, wincing as she shifted in her restraints. Again, the other officers in the room exchanged glances. Sub-Commander Krell 5 stepped forward, his scales shifting to the deep purple that indicated confusion among their kind. Commander, perhaps we should increase the neural stimulation. She may still be under the influence of combat drugs. Oh, I'm perfectly lucid, Elena interjected before Vex-Nine could respond. Though I have to say, your interrogation techniques could use some work. The Zephyrians at least had the courtesy to offer me something to drink before they started poking around in my brain. Vex-Nine felt his primary heart skip a beat. The Zephyrians, their allies. How could this human know about their neural interrogation methods unless you've been captured before? He stated, his voice suddenly much quieter. Captured, escaped, captured again, escaped again. Elena ticked off each event on her fingers, despite the energy shackles that should have prevented any movement whatsoever. Vex-Nine made a mental note to have his engineers explain how that was possible. Later, after he figured out what exactly he was dealing with, the Hegemony's files indicate this is your first military action, Krell 5 said, consulting his datapad with growing concern. Elena laughed, not the broken, hysteric laughter of someone pushed to their mental limits, but genuine, warm amusement. It was, Vex-Nine realized with growing unease, the laugh of someone who knew something he didn't. Oh, that's rich, she said, still chuckling. First military action. Tell me, Sub-Commander. Krell, is it? How exactly do your intelligence networks define military action? Because I'm pretty sure the 3 years I spent as a prisoner of war on Titan Station counts as military involvement. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Titan Station. Even Vex-Nine, who prided himself on his knowledge of human military installations, had only heard whispers about that place. Rumors, stories told in the dark corners of the galaxy by traders who claimed to know someone who knew someone who had seen the aftermath. Titan Station was destroyed, Krell 5 said slowly, along with everyone on it. Destroyed. Yes. Elena's expression grew distant for a moment, and something cold flickered behind her eyes. Everyone on it. Well, that depends on your definition of everyone, doesn't it? Vex-Nine activated his personal communications implant, sending a priority message to his intelligence division. He needed everything they had on Titan Station, and he needed it now. Something about the way this human spoke, the casual confidence in her voice, was setting off every survival instinct his species had evolved over thousands of years. You're lying, he said, though he didn't quite believe it himself. Am I? Elena met his gaze directly, something that most species found impossible to do when facing a hegemony commander. Tell you what, Vex-Nine. It is Vex-Nine, right? I can tell by the scar pattern on your left mandible. Very distinctive. Anyway, let me make you a deal. Prisoners don't make deals, Krell 5 snarled, his scales shifting to an aggressive red. Elena ignored him completely, keeping her focus on Vex-Nine. Ask me something. Anything about your military operations, your fleet movements, your secret bases. Pick something really obscure, something that only high-ranking hegemony officers would know. The request was so absurd that Vex-Nine found himself actually considering it. What could this human possibly gain by demonstrating her ignorance of their military secrets? Unless, fine, he said, against his better judgment. What can you tell me about Operation Silent Tide? The change in Elena's expression was immediate and dramatic. The amusement vanished, replaced by something much more serious, much more dangerous. Operation Silent Tide, she repeated slowly, was your attempt to infiltrate the Centauri defense grid using modified quantum signatures to make your ships appear as commercial vessels. The operation was scheduled to begin in 18 days, with a fleet of 12 modified cruisers under the command of Admiral Thane II. Vex-Nine felt his secondary heart stop completely. Operation Silent Tide was classified at the highest levels. Even most of his own officers didn't know the details. The only way a human could possibly know about it was if. How? He whispered. Elena's smile returned, but this time it wasn't warm at all. Wrong question, Commander. The question you should be asking is how long have I been feeding your intelligence network false information about human fleet positions? The silence that followed was so complete that Vex-Nine could hear the subtle hum of the ship's life support systems. His officers stood frozen, processing the implications of what they'd just heard. If this human was telling the truth, if she had somehow compromised their intelligence gathering. Impossible, Krell 5 said, but his voice lacked conviction. Our networks are impenetrable. We use quantum encryption, biological verification, neural pattern recognition. Cute, Elena said. Did you know that human neural patterns can be temporarily altered using a combination of controlled electromagnetic pulses and certain psychoactive compounds? Takes about 6 hours to fully take effect, and the changes last for roughly 72 hours, just long enough to fool most bioscanners. Vex-Nine's tactical computer was already running probability calculations, cross-referencing known human capabilities with the security failures they'd experienced over the past several months. The results were disturbing. You're claiming to be a deep cover operative, he said carefully. I'm not claiming anything, Elena replied. I'm stating facts. For the past 8 months, I've been Lieutenant Sarah Voss of the Terran Intelligence Corps, attached to your monitoring station on Kepler 442b. Lovely place, by the way. The artificial gravity makes my joints ache, but the view of the binary stars is spectacular. Sarah Voss. Vex-Nine's implant immediately accessed the personnel files. Human female, age 28, recruited from the outer colonies after her family was killed in a pirate raid. Clean psychological profile, exemplary service record, recommended for advanced training by her immediate supervisors. Sarah Voss is dead, Krell 5 said. But he was already checking his own records. She died in the facility explosion 3 days ago. Sarah Voss never existed. Elena corrected him. Elena Martinez, on the other hand, has been very much alive for the past 3 years ever since she supposedly died on Titan Station, along with everyone else. The pieces were starting to fall into place, and Vex-Nine didn't like the picture they were forming. Show me, he said quietly. Show you what? If you are who you claim to be, if you survive Titan Station, then you'll have proof. The Hegemony doesn't take prisoners there. We have other methods of dealing with captured humans. Elena's expression grew grim. You mean the branding? Vex-Nine nodded slowly. Every human captured at Titan Station had been marked with the Hegemony's insignia, burned directly into their flesh using quantum scarring techniques that made the marks impossible to remove or fake. It was a practice that had been discontinued after the station's destruction, deemed too cruel even by Hegemony standards. Very well, Elena said. But I should warn you, Commander. What you're about to see might change your perspective on this war considerably. She began working at the fastenings of her torn military jacket, moving slowly due to her restraints. Vex-Nine found himself holding his breath as she pulled the fabric aside, revealing her left shoulder. The silence in the room was deafening. There, burned into Elena's skin with unmistakable precision, was the triple spiral of the Hegemony's military insignia. But that wasn't what made Vex-Nine's blood run cold. It was the smaller marks surrounding it. Numbers, dates, coordinates, battle records. Every major engagement she'd survived. Every mission she'd completed. Every Hegemony vessel she'd helped destroy. All of it permanently etched into her flesh like a living document of war. "Sweet Nebula, preserve us," Krell 5 whispered. "She's a ghost." Elena carefully adjusted her jacket, her movements deliberate and controlled. "Not a ghost, Sub-Commander. Just someone who learned that sometimes the best way to fight an enemy is to let them think they've won." Vex-Nine's mind was racing. If this human had been operating under deep cover for 8 months, if she had access to their most classified information, then the implications were staggering. How many operations had been compromised? How many of their strategic advantages were based on false intelligence she had provided? "What do you want?" he asked. Because in his experience, captured operatives always wanted something. Information, prisoner exchanges, passage to neutral territory. There was always an angle. Elena's smile returned, and this time it was genuinely warm, friendly, even, which, given everything he'd learned in the past few minutes, absolutely terrified him. "Want? Oh, Commander, I think you're misunderstanding the situation. I don't want anything from you." "Then why reveal yourself? Why blow your cover?" "Because," Elena said, her voice taking on a conversational tone that somehow made her words even more ominous. "My mission here is complete. The data I needed has been transmitted. The targets have been eliminated. And your fleet movements for the next 6 months are now in the hands of Terran Command." Vex-Nine felt a chill run down his spine. "What data?" "The quantum frequency signatures for your new stealth ships. The deployment schedules for your advanced weapons platforms. Oh, and the complete roster of every deep cover agent you have operating in human space." Elena paused, as if considering whether to continue. "Should I go on?" The war room erupted into chaos as officers began shouting orders, demanding security sweeps, calling for emergency communications with the fleet. But Vex-Nine barely heard them. He was staring at the human woman who had just casually destroyed months of careful intelligence gathering with a few sentences. "How?" he asked again, his voice barely audible over the commotion. Elena leaned forward, as much as her restraints would allow, her eyes locked on his. "Because 3 years ago, when your people thought they broke me on Titan Station, they made one crucial mistake." "Which was?" Her smile widened, and for the first time since the interrogation began, Vex-Nine saw something truly dangerous in her expression, something that spoke of patience, planning, and a capacity for revenge that his species' most ruthless warriors would respect. "They forgot that humans don't break, Commander. We adapt." The emergency klaxons had been wailing for exactly 17 minutes, when Admiral Thane II burst through the war room doors, his ceremonial armor clattering with each thunderous step. Vex-Nine had never been so relieved to see his superior officer, though he suspected that relief would be short-lived once Thane II learned what had transpired. "Report," Thane II barked, his massive frame filling the doorway. At nearly 3 meters tall, he was an imposing figure even by Hegemony standards, with battle scars crisscrossing his chitinous hide like a roadmap of military glory. "Sir," Vex-Nine began, then paused. How exactly did one explain that their entire war effort had potentially been compromised by a single human female, who was currently sitting in their custody, looking remarkably pleased with herself, despite being covered in her own blood? "Well," Thane II's voice carried the kind of authority that had commanded fleets across 12 star systems. "We have a problem," Admiral Krell 5 interjected, his scales still a sickly purple color. "The prisoner, she's not who we thought she was." Elena chose that moment to let out a small chuckle. "Oh, this should be fun." "Hello, Admiral. Love what you've done with the ship. Very imposing. Though I have to ask, is the excessive use of black metal a cultural thing, or are you all just going through a really intense phase?" Thane II's 8 eyes swiveled to focus on Elena with laser-like intensity. "You dare mock the eternal Hegemony human?" "Mock? Oh no, Admiral. I'm being genuinely curious. I mean, from a psychological warfare standpoint, it's brilliant. Nothing says we're definitely the bad guys quite like a ship that looks like it was designed by someone's nightmare. Elena paused thoughtfully, though I have to wonder if it affects recruitment. Do young Hegemony citizens see these ships and think, yes, that's definitely the organization I want to join, or do they run screaming to the nearest neutral territory? Vex-Nine watched his superior's mandibles click together in a rhythm that he recognized as barely controlled rage. This was not going well. Perhaps, Vex-Nine said quickly, we should brief the Admiral on what we've learned. Yes, Thane too said, never taking his eyes off Elena. Do that. For the next few minutes, Vex-Nine explained everything. On the infiltration, the false identity, the compromised intelligence, the branded insignia. With each revelation, Thane 2's expression grew darker, until by the end of the briefing, the temperature in the room seemed to have dropped another 10 degrees. Impossible, Thane 2 said finally. Our security protocols are absolute. No human could maintain deep cover for 8 months without detection. And yet, Elena said cheerfully, here we are. Though I have to give credit where it's due. Your psychological evaluation protocols are quite thorough. It took me weeks to perfect Sarah Voss's personality quirks. Did you know she was terrified of small spaces? Took some real commitment to method acting to sell that phobia during the monthly psychological reviews. You're lying, Thane 2 snarled.
Am I? Tell me, Admiral, what's the current status of your stealth fleet?
The one that was supposed to begin Operation Silent Tide in, oh what was it, 18 days. Thane 2's silence was answer enough. Elena nodded sagely. I thought so. You see, the beautiful thing about quantum communication arrays is that they work both ways. While I was downloading your fleet specifications, I was also uploading some rather interesting data about your planned attack routes. Terran Command was very grateful for the information. What kind of data? Vex-Nine asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. Oh, nothing too dramatic. Just the quantum signatures of every ship in your stealth fleet, complete with their planned attack vectors, target priorities, and escape routes. Elena's tone remained conversational, as if she were discussing the weather rather than military intelligence that could shift the balance of the war. I imagine your crews are having quite the interesting morning right about now. As if summoned by her words, Thane 2's personal communicator began chiming urgently. The Admiral's expression grew progressively more thunderous as he listened to the incoming reports. When he finally closed the connection, his voice was deadly quiet. 17 ships, he said. 17 of our most advanced stealth vessels, detected and destroyed by human interceptor squadrons that were somehow waiting in exactly the right positions. Only 17? Elena looked genuinely disappointed. I was hoping for at least 20. Though I suppose some of your captains are smarter than others. Thane 2 took a step forward, his massive claws extending from their sheaths. I'm going to personally dismantle you, piece by piece, until you tell us everything you know about human military capabilities. That's adorable, Elena replied, completely unfazed by the threat. But I think you're misunderstanding something fundamental about this situation, which is, Elena's expression grew serious, for the first time since the interrogation began. You think I'm your prisoner. You think you caught me. But the truth is, Admiral, I'm exactly where I planned to be. Vex-Nine felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? I mean that destroying your monitoring station was never the primary objective. It was a distraction. A way to ensure that I would be brought here, to this ship, at exactly this time. Why? Thane 2 demanded. Elena smiled, and this time there was nothing warm or amused about it. Because this ship, the Void Sovereign, happens to be the mobile command center for your entire Outer Rim operation. Every fleet movement, every strategic decision, every classified communication flows through the quantum core in the deck below us. The silence that followed was deafening. And Elena continued conversationally, because 17 minutes ago when your emergency klaxon started blaring, the quantum resonance from the alarm system created a very specific harmonic frequency in the ship's hull. Vex-Nine's tactical implant began running emergency calculations, and the results made his blood turn to ice.
Oh.
The quantum bombs. The what? Thane 2 spun to face his subordinate. During the facility raid, Vex-Nine said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper, she had access to our quantum storage bays. We assumed she was trying to steal materials for improvised explosives. Oh, I was, Elena confirmed helpfully.
Oh.
But not the kind you were thinking of. Quantum destabilization charges are remarkably easy to construct if you know the right frequencies, and they're absolutely tiny, small enough to hide in, say, the seams of a military jacket. Thane 2's eyes went wide with horror. Security. Full body scan. Now, I'm afraid it's a bit late for that, Elena said, checking her chronometer. You see, quantum destabilization devices have a very predictable timer once they're activated, and they're activated by a very specific harmonic frequency, the kind of frequency produced by emergency klaxons that have been wailing for exactly. She paused, tilting her head, as if listening to something only she could hear. 18 minutes. The explosion wasn't dramatic. There was no fire, no shockwave, no Hollywood-style special effects. One moment the Void Sovereign was the most advanced command ship in the Hegemony fleet, and the next moment it was a rapidly expanding cloud of quantum-disrupted particles drifting through space. In the final seconds before the ship's complete molecular dissolution, as emergency force fields flickered and failed around them, Vex-9 found himself staring at the human female, who had just single-handedly destroyed the backbone of their military operation. How? He managed to ask, even as the deck began to fade beneath his feet. Elena Martinez, formerly Lieutenant Sarah Voss, formerly prisoner of Titan Station, smiled one last time. I told you, Commander, humans don't break, we adapt, and sometimes, we take everyone else down with us. The last thing Vex-9 saw before the quantum dissolution reached the war room was Elena's scarred shoulder, where the Hegemony insignia was branded into her flesh. But now, in the flickering light of the failing ship, he could see something he had missed before. Beneath the official military marking, barely visible unless you knew what to look for, was another symbol. Smaller, older, human. The insignia of the Terran Intelligence Corps. As consciousness faded, and his molecules began their final dance with the quantum foam, Vex-9 realized that Elena Martinez had never been their prisoner at all. She had been exactly what she claimed to be from the very beginning, a ghost, a weapon, a reminder that in the vast darkness between the stars, humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology, or their numbers or their individual courage, it was their absolute terrifying magnificent refusal to surrender, even when it meant taking their enemies down with them. The war between the Hegemony and humanity would continue for many more years, fought across countless star systems with weapons that could crack planets and fleets that numbered in the thousands. But military historians would later mark this moment, this sacrifice, as the turning point. Not because of the ships that were destroyed or the intelligence that was gained, but because of what Elena Martinez proved on that day. She proved that humans were willing to die to protect what they loved. More importantly, she proved they were willing to take their enemies with them. And in the cold equations of interstellar warfare, that kind of certainty was the most terrifying weapon of all. The debris field that had once been the Void Sovereign drifted silently through space, carrying with it the scattered atoms of friend and foe alike. In the vast cosmic dance of war and peace, birth and death, hope and despair, it was just another mote of dust among the stars. But somewhere in that expanding cloud of quantum-disrupted matter, the echo of Elena Martinez's final smile lingered like a promise that humanity would never stop fighting, a promise that they would never stop adapting, and a promise that sometimes, the best way to ensure victory was to make sure that defeat cost the enemy everything. The ghost of Titan Station had finally come home.